IDRC. I am the project specialist for the Identification and Recruitment Consortium. And today's presentation is entitled Recruiting 101, What All Recruiters Should Know. We're just getting ready to enter the summer months, which for many states are the prime recruiting months, the peak recruiting months. And so many states are starting to hire new recruiters. And so we thought now would be a terrific time to go through and refresh and talk about the basics that all recruiters should know about what it means to be a recruiter, as well as about what resources out there are available for recruiters. Recruiting is often a fast-paced job. New recruiters are often asked to learn quickly and adapt on the fly to circumstances that they encounter in the field. This training today is a crash course on what it means to be a recruiter. For the next hour, we'll cover what it means to be a recruiter, what expectations recruiters should have about working in the field, as well as some helpful tips to get them ready for success as quickly as possible. We are also honored today to have 3 recruiters from around the country who are going to be helping out and participating by sharing about some of their own experiences and about what they wish they knew when they first began working as a recruiter. To begin with, let's talk about what does it mean to be a recruiter. What is a recruiter? Recruiters are an integral part of the migrant education program. In many ways, they are the face of the program. When we are out in the community, out meeting people, visiting farms, visiting housing, we are the very first people that many migrant families meet. We are the front lines of the migrant education program. Before being able to be enrolled in the migrant education program, families are going to be meeting recruiters. So recruiters are the eyes and ears of the migrant education program. They are the ones that are out in the communities, actively looking for new families, making those connections, building those bridges. And they're the ones that are trying to find those families that are eligible for MEP services, as well as to help those families that are eligible get connected to the services they need that exist in their community. The job and role of a recruiter is to identify and enroll all migrant students across their assigned area in a timely manner and to provide those initial services to students per state regulations. While this may seem like a daunting task, many of us hear that word all and it can provide a little bit of anxiety. But all recruiters, we work hard, we do the best we can to get out there. And over time, with the resources that are available, we can be successful to find all the students that we can. The recruiter has to use all available information and resources at their disposal in order to find leads to follow up on, conduct those verbal interviews with family, and make decisions on eligibility. When breaking it down about what the actual job responsibilities of a recruiter include, here are some of the basics. Keep in mind, this can change from state to state. So your state may have some additional responsibilities that may not be on the list. To begin with, recruiters are responsible for having a thorough knowledge of the migrant education program's eligibility guidelines that are outlined in the non-regulatory guidance. Recruiters, in order to properly identify migrant students, have to know and understand the rules behind eligibility. Recruiters are responsible for establishing and maintaining a recruitment network in their community, a collection of contacts, other organizations, important people in the community, farm owners, agribusinesses that recruiters can go to in order to learn new information about what is going on, about what families are arriving, and so that they have other people out in the community that can look for them to help them find new students. The stronger and larger a recruiter's recruitment network is in the communities that they are working in, the easier their job becomes because you have more eyes and ears out working in the communities, looking for those migrant students to pass them along to you. Recruiters are responsible for locating the areas where migrant students and families both live and work. Many ways we're going to talk a little bit more, but recruiters are like detectives that we have to go out and search, find these places, find these businesses, make sure we're putting in the groundwork to find where people are living. And then they have to conduct interviews in order to determine student eligibility. All eligibility information is gained through these verbal interviews, talking, communicating with people. And so it's really important that recruiters are comfortable having those interview skills, comfortable talking to people they may not know, comfortable being able to talk and ask questions in such a way to get that information. Recruiters are also responsible for explaining the migrant education program and the services offered. Knowing the services that your area provides to migrant students is a huge help in helping you to recruit. It's a great selling point. Remember that when we are finding new families, we're trying to get them to buy in on the idea of being part of the migrant education program. And a big selling point for that is telling them about the services that they're going to receive. And so as a recruiter, it is your responsibility to know about the services that are offered and to find out, if you are unaware, what services are offered so that you can properly explain it to the families that you meet. Recruiters are also responsible for filling out certificates of eligibility and collecting all necessary student information. The certificate of eligibility is a requirement placed by the Federal Office of Migrant Education. Before a student may receive services, they must have a complete and filled out COE on file. And so recruiters have to be able to be efficient at filling out those COEs and making sure they have all necessary information. Recruiters are also responsible for making sure that they're implementing state quality control procedures. These procedures are going to vary depending on your state. Each state has their own measures. It can be something simple as, ensuring that the information collected on the COE is correct, and also includes things like our annual re-interviews that we are required to complete. As well as recruiters are responsible for making sure that they are following proper ethical standards and following all confidentiality laws related to student information. It's crucial that recruiters are not out there sharing personal identifiable information about our families, and that we are following all laws and regulations that your states are placing. If you're unaware of the FERPA laws, there are lots of great trainings provided by OME and the Department of Education about what FERPA is. And if you are unaware or unsure of what the laws are in your state related to sharing student information, please be sure to ask your supervisor so that they can inform you so that you can know. Now, what should a recruiter expect? This is often one of the top questions I get asked when talking to a new recruiter. What should I expect about what the job is like? To begin with, recruiters should often expect, to spend longer days working in the field. We want to make sure that as we are getting out there, when we talk about being in the field, we're referring specifically to being out in the communities where migrant students and migrant workers live. We want to make sure that we are able to take advantage of those times that we are out in the field to fully explore the area. We want to make sure that we're spending a majority of our time out in the communities, talking to people instead of driving back and forth. So we want to make sure that we are spending as much time as possible when we're out in the field. Recruiters should expect to be working multiple days a week out in the field. So it's not just 1 or 2 days going out, visiting the communities where we work. It's oftentimes 3, 4, 5 days a week that we're getting out there, interacting with families. The more that we are out there, the better that we are able to meet our families, that we're able to build up our network and make those connections that are going to really, really help make finding students easier. Recruiters should expect to do plenty of driving. Recruiters often have to drive not just from their home to the areas where they've been assigned, where they work, but also back and forth between different locations within a community. Recruiters will be spending a lot of time in their car, and so we have to be comfortable being in our car, being able to drive around. We also should expect for recruiters to visit a wide variety of different locations. Oftentimes, I think new recruiters can focus on just one or two different types of locations, but the reality is we have to, in order to be thorough and to find as many students as possible, we have to make sure that we are trying to visit as many different types of locations as possible. So we want to be out there visiting farms, agribusinesses, making sure that we're visiting all different types of farms and agribusinesses, not just the seasonal farms that we know about, but making sure we're checking to see, are we looking for temporary work as well? Are we visiting, the dairy farms in our area, the meat processors, the chicken plants, the egg farms in our area, to make sure that we're getting casting a wide net. We want to make sure that we're visiting different housing sites. So looking for those places where where families are living, so that we can go and meet them in their homes. So we make sure that we're not interrupting them at work. We also should expect for recruiters to be able to have some flexibility with their schedule. Oftentimes, migrant families can be hard to track down, and so we have to make sure that we are available to meet them at the times that they're available to talk to us. And so sometimes that may mean we have to wake up early to go out to visit and talk to workers before they're going into the fields, before they are beginning their jobs. And sometimes it may mean we have to go out a little bit later at night in order to talk to workers as they're coming back home, to talk to those workers as they are leaving work. And so we have to be able to have that flexibility to make sure that we are meeting people when they are in fact available. And then maybe most importantly, we have to make sure that as recruiters that we are there to expect the unexpected. I think any experienced recruiter can tell you that there's constant surprises, that you never truly know 100% what's going to happen when you're out in the field. And so we have to, just like we have to have flexibility about our time and schedule, we need to have flexibility about what exactly we will be doing and facing. And we have to sometimes think quick on our feet in order to respond appropriately with what we are encountering. And so now I would like to share a little bit from one of the recruiters that offered to participate. I do not see her in the attendance list today, but I can share a little bit with what she said about what she wished she knew when she first started. It comes from Olivia Gonzalez, who is a lead recruiter from the state of Oregon. And Olivia, when I asked her, what does she wish she knew when she first started working for the migrant education program as a recruiter, she mentioned that one of the top things is to make sure that, whatever you learn as a recruiter, you're not just keeping that to yourself, that you're being able to share that with those around you. And I think it's a really terrific point, because as a recruiter, our knowledge is very communal. What we learn can help other recruiters find more families. And so we shouldn't be selfish about the knowledge that we're learning. We shouldn't be selfish about the contacts that we're making. We should share as much as possible so that others can take advantage of those connections that we're making. Olivia also mentioned, just like I was talking about knowing what services are available, that it's important to research what the program does and the impact it has on students. There are lots of videos available on YouTube that talk about the migrant education program. There's some that have testimonials from students out there about how their lives have been impacted. I know each year at the NASME conference, they present scholarships to students, and we get to hear terrific stories, success stories from migrant students. And so it's worth taking the time to do the research to learn about the history of the migrant education program so that we can know how to properly explain the program to all the families that we meet. Olivia also mentioned that it's important to make sure that as newer recruiters that we are, in constant contact with our supervisors. She made a point to mention how she always asks, her supervisor specifically for information on what a recruiter's role is and what a recruiter's responsibility is. Communication is key, and really there's no job out there like being a recruiter. It's so different than what many jobs people are experienced with. And so that communication with supervisors is important, to always be asking, if there's anything else that you can do better or any other things that you might be forgetting, to have that communication, open line of communication with your supervisor to make sure that you are being as thorough and effective as possible out in the field. And then lastly, Olivia mentioned that it's really important for recruiters to learn to understand, what a migrant lifestyle is. Many recruiters that I've met have come from migrant families themselves, and that's terrific because they can share in those experiences with families. It's great when we can have migrant students grow up to become recruiters, but many of us that come from outside backgrounds might not know, the struggles of what it means to be a migrant family. And so it's important for recruiters to be empathetic, to keep an open mind, to learn about the different cultures that they're going to be encountering out in the field, and to truly take the time to try to learn and understand, what a migrant lifestyle is, what that means, and what it means for the families coming into your area. So now let's transition a little bit and talk about the different resources that are actually out there and available for recruiters. There are countless resources that recruiters can turn to that will help them learn more about the migrant education program, to learn more about what it means to be a recruiter, as well as to gather and collect information that will help them find new families. But in this presentation, we're only going to start, we're going to focus on a few of them, and then hopefully that'll give you all enough information so you can explore to find your own resources. The first resource I want to share with you all is, the official Federal Migrant Education Program website. It can be found at results.ed.gov. I've shared that link in the chat for those that might not have visited before. And this is the official website of the Migrant Education Program. And so if you go to results.ed.gov, it'll take you straight here. And this is where you can find a lot of the official documents related to the Migrant Education Program. All important legislation related to the Migrant Education Program, all the laws that govern the Migrant Education Program can be found on the results.ed.gov website. To access it, here at the top, you're going to see a menu bar. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to see here where it says legislation and policy. You're going to go down and click where it says all legislation and policy. And when you do that, that's going to take you to the legislation page. And so here, this is where you can find the written laws related to the Migrant Education Program. For many of us recruiters, we go through trainings, but it's important for us to go read through these documents to understand them ourselves as best as we can. You can see here, there's a section related entirely to COVID-19, to the pandemic, how it's affected recruiting and the Migrant Education Program. You can see here as well, there's information on FERPA. We talked a little bit earlier about the importance of making sure that we're following all laws related to privacy. So if you want to learn a little bit more about FERPA, you can go read on the FERPA, read the laws related to FERPA and help you understand them better. We can also see here this section called MEP Policy and Guidance. And so this right here is actually where you can find the non-regulatory guidance. We're going to be talking about it a little bit more here in a bit, but the non-regulatory guidance is the document that governs, what makes a student eligible, how migrant education program should run, and what identification and recruitment is. You also, under the legislation and policy section, you can see here a section related entirely to where it says the National Certificate of Eligibility. And so this is a section related all to learning about what the COE is. As we mentioned, the COE is crucial and necessary for all students. A student must have a completed COE on file before they are able to get services. And so you can see here, there's the National COE instructions that you can click on and download. And for those that do not know about the National COE instructions, it's a terrific document that I recommend everyone read through that talks all about legislation related to the migrant education program and the COE. There's instructions on completing a COE, how you should complete it, what information is required, what each section is for, definitions of each section. And so it's a quick read through. And so I really recommend all recruiters to go and familiarize themselves with it. I'm going to go ahead and paste the link, direct link to that in the chat as well, so that anybody that isn't aware of it can download the PDF. But besides just legislation and policy, the results.ed.gov, the Migrant Education Program website, has a lot of other really neat things. For example, here you see MEP policy Q&As. And so this is a frequently asked question portion of the website. And so if states have questions, official questions that they submit to OME, the Federal Office of Migrant Education, they will sometimes post the question online with an answer. And so the questions, you can sort them by topic. You can see topics related specifically to child eligibility, the comprehensive needs assessment and service delivery plans that all states are required to do, direct identification and recruitment, and much more. And so, you know, if you look for specifically topics related to child eligibility, you can see, you click it and it'll sort it, showing you all questions that OME has answered. So for example, you can see here, the most recent question they've posted is turning chicken fat into oil considered qualifying agricultural work for the purposes of the migrant education program. The worker puts the chicken fat into a machine, then melts it, turning it into oil. He then sends the oil to be shipped elsewhere. The worker does not directly work with the chickens or extract the chicken fat. Their work begins with placing the fat into the machine. And then if you click where it says view answer, you will see OME's response. It says here, based on the information provided, the Office of Migrant Education would not consider this work to be agricultural work or employment. For purposes of the MEP, because it is beyond those initial processing stages, it does not count as qualifying work. And so see, OME always provides a direct response, and they often include references to MEP rules and regulations. So you can see here, you know, as a reference for the answer to this question, it says, see MEP non-regulatory guidance, chapter 2, questions F20, 24, and 25. And so it's really nice to be able to go through, read the responses that OME provides, letting you know their thought process and to see why that's their thought process as well. One of the other terrific resources that the official Migrant Education Program website has, you can go up here to where it says Tools and Curriculum. And from the Tools and Curriculum page, you can see here where it says IDNR Manual and IDNR Curriculum. If you click on the IDNR Curriculum, this is a curriculum that OME has created specifically to help train recruiters. And so it can take you from the background and overview of what a recruiter is and the introduction to the migrant education program up through the process of creating the COE. And so each module has different levels. You can see here, introduction to the migrant education program, and it includes slides that you can download, as well as some other resources that are available for you. And so it's a great tool to help you learn a little bit more about what it means to be a recruiter. And so I really encourage everybody to go and explore the curriculum to learn a little more. You can also see where here it says IDNR Manual. And this is the National identification and recruitment manual crafted by the Office of Migrant Education Program to really kind of help explain some of the aspects of what it means to be a recruiter and the recruitment process. And so there's two versions of it. You can see here, there's the recruiter manual and then an administrator manual as well. And so for those that are new to recruiting, those new recruiters out there, we encourage you all to go and check out the IDNR manual. You can download a PDF version of the entire manual from here, or you can click through chapter by chapter. So for example, if you were to click on chapter 1, that's all about, you know, the background and overview of the migrant education program. It'll take you through, you know, what your learning objectives are, what, you know, you're supposed to be learning during this chapter, as well as, you know, start explaining some of the information as well, and going all the way through to how MEP is organized, talk a little bit about the purpose of the migrant education program, and so forth. And so we encourage everybody to go through. All recruiters out there should read the national IDNR manual, as well as your state's IDNR manual. So many states also include their own unique IDNR manuals that they've crafted and created that explain their own processes and ways of doing things. And so if you have not seen your state's IDNR manual, be sure to reach out to your supervisor. Ask your supervisor if you may see it, if they can hand that over to you, share it with you, so you can read through that to better understand how not just nationally identification and recruitment is conducted, but how your state specifically conducts identification and recruitment. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the non-regulatory guidance, which you'll often refer to or hear referred to as the NRG. The NRG is essentially like the recruiting rulebook. It is produced by the Federal Office of Migrant Education. It's available on the ResultsEdgov website, as I showed. And it's the book that covers all of the regulations related to the governing of MEP. For us as recruiters, chapters 2 and 3 are the most important chapters in the NRG, as they are the ones that specifically cover the rules of eligibility and what it means to identify and recruit new students. Chapter 2 specifically, it's one of the longest chapters in the guidance, but it is a chapter that tells you exactly everything you need to know about who qualifies for the migrant education program. When you're opening up the NRG, at first, it can be very intimidating, but once you familiarize yourself with it, it's very simple to use. The book is broken down, NRG is broken down into different chapters that cover a different topic. And then within each chapter, there's subheadings that are often alphabetized. And so we saw earlier when we were looking at the MEP Q&As on the results.ed website, it was talking about, you know, chapter 2 of the guidance, then question F24. And so that's telling you that to look at that reference that OME is making, you go to chapter 2, then subsection F, and then question 24. You can see here on the right, this is a screenshot of what the guidance looks like. So you can see, kind of have a better idea if you're not familiar with what it looks like, how it is organized. You can see chapter, you know, we're in chapter 2, child eligibility, it says at the top of the page. And then you can see where it says subsection D, qualifying move. And so anything in that section are questions related entirely to what is a qualifying move. And then down below, you can see individual questions, such as, you know, what is a qualifying move? What does the term residence mean related to qualifying move? What does it mean to move due to economic necessity, and so forth? If you are unsure if a student is eligible for the migrant education program, or if you have a question specifically related about eligibility, it's always great to first search through the NRG. So you want to search for the related topic in the NRG. So what you're going to want to do is, if you're, for example, unsure if a certain qualifying activity works, you're going to want to find that section related to the qualifying activity. And then you're going to want to read through each question in that section related to the topic and apply the given rules listed there. So for example, you are out recruiting and encounter a migrant worker who works cleaning conveyor belts in a lettuce packing house. So at the end of the day, after the lettuce has gone through the conveyor belts, been sorted and boxed, this worker comes in to help clean those conveyor belts, to check to make sure that they're in proper working order and they're not getting too dirty. So you as a recruiter, you're not sure if that activity counts as a qualifying activity for the purposes of eligibility. So what should you do? Your first step is, if you are trying to determine if cleaning conveyor belts at lettuce packing house counts as a qualifying activity, you're going to want to look for the topic in chapter 2 specifically related to agricultural or fishing work, because that's going to tell you, what is and does not, what does and does not qualify. So you're going to look for the topic, which is section F, agricultural work or fishing work, on page 24 of the NRG. From there, you're going to start reading through each of the questions individually. Based on question F1, we know that agricultural work is when production or initial processing is work that is done in the initial production or processing of raw agricultural products. And then you need to read question F2 and ask yourself if cleaning conveyor belts falls under the section of production. And after reading that, you can guess that cleaning conveyor belts does not count as production, because production is all about planting and harvesting. And so then you have to look and see if it can qualify under initial processing. There are several questions in the guidance related to initial processing. They are all found in questions F22 through F25 and pages 27 and 28 of the guidance. So you're going to want to go and look and read sections F22 or questions F22 through F25. Doing so, we're going to come to question F25, and here's where we need to pay special attention. The question is, what work is not considered production or initial processing? And as we read through the question, you can see here, it specifically mentions at the end, with regard to work such as repairing or maintaining equipment used for production or processing, or cleaning or sterilizing farm machinery or processing equipment, the department does not consider individuals whose profession it is to do this work or who were hired solely to perform this work to be performing agricultural work. So as you can see in this section, it clearly states that cleaning or sterilizing farm machinery, when that is the only job performed, does not count as agricultural work. And so knowing that, we can safely assume then that cleaning conveyor belts at the lettuce packing house does not count as a qualifying activity because it does not meet the requirements for initial processing of raw agricultural products. And so the guidance covers all ranges of topics related to eligibility. So if you are a state that has a lot of seasonal work and you're not as familiar with temporary work, you can go to the guidance, go to chapter 2, and find the section related to temporary work. Read through it, read through the questions that are asked to learn more about temporary work so you can prepare yourselves for when you encounter those situations out in the field. Likewise, if you're a state that has a lot of temporary work and not as much seasonal work, maybe you're a little rustier on the seasonal side of things, you can go and you can read the section on seasonal work to learn a little bit more about it. One tip I will provide to you all, especially in light of the example we just had, is that oftentimes it's important to remember that many workers on farms may perform multiple jobs or tasks. And so if you are finding a situation where a worker does not qualify because the job they perform on a farm does not count as qualifying work, don't give up. Many times people are performing multiple jobs at once. And so you want to always check to see what other jobs or tasks they have performed within those 60 days of moving. It very well could be that they performed and engaged in a different qualifying activity during that time. We as recruiters just have to make sure that we are being as thorough as possible, going through, trying to find all the jobs they did, to find all routes possible for how they might qualify. And so now we're going to hear from one of our other panelists, from Ginny from Missouri.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, would you like to share with us what you wish you knew when you first started as a recruiter?
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with, our personalities, but I used to worry a lot about me doing my job correctly. I'm like, like if I make a mistake or, I used to worry too much whenever I would talk to the families. Um, I wasn't being as personal as I am right now because I've been doing this for 12 years. So that makes a huge difference. But I was like too worried about asking the right questions, and making sure that I had all the information on the COE like perfect and all that. So maybe I came across as being like impersonal, to families, and I learned that that I need to relax. I need to find the information from the families, even if it takes me an hour, because a lot of times families just want to talk about their problems, whatever the issues they're facing, family issues. I mean, you're a recruiter, but sometimes you're also like a confidant, like somebody that they need to talk to in their own language, in Spanish or whatever. So it was just me that I worried too much about having the right information and knowing, all the information in order for me to do a good COE or to have it like perfect right there and then. And then I just had to learn that sometimes I wouldn't have all the information right there. Sometimes in the middle of a conversation, I will call, my supervisor or another recruiter, because I had questions. So I just, I just learned that I had to relax, and then nothing was like black and white in regards to talking to a family and getting the COE. It was just about learning, like from the books, but also learning how to talk to families and how to make them feel comfortable, because the information they're providing is like really personal. So for a lot of them, it's just hard to see somebody out of the blue knocking on their doors asking, it's your son's birthday, such and such, and they'll be like, who are you and why do you want to know this? So what I learned is just to relax, to, even if we don't have all the answers right there, I will call somebody. So you just have to feel comfortable, and the information will come out. And also whenever you have questions, just don't feel bad about making a mistake. I learned that I will be like, yes, I have the COE, I have all the information. I will turn it in, and they'll be like, well, you're missing this, you didn't ask for that, and all that. And I was like, oh my gosh, but you're not getting in trouble or anything. It's just a part of the learning process. I mean, making mistakes is part of it. How I learn a lot of the things that I know now.
Very well put. I think a lot of new recruiters were worried so much about making those mistakes, but it's all part of the learning process. And so, you know, don't worry, get out there, do your best, and be in constant communication with your supervisor, so that when those mistakes happen, you can adjust and learn and continue forward.
Yes, and do not hesitate on asking questions, even if it's the same question 20 times. I mean, it's just part of the learning process. I will, like, some things will never come to my head. I'll be like, okay, I'm going to remember next time for sure. And the next time will come, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I do not remember what was, the resolution to this. I have to ask again. And that's part of it. I mean, uh, like getting to see all this information for the new recruiters that are part of this webinar right now, it may feel overwhelming, like looking at the results webpage and all the information that is there. Uh, but it comes, you can read all that you want to read, and a lot of things are not going to make sense unless you are out there talking to families out in the field and having that one-on-one experience. And right now with with COVID and everything. I know it's hard for everybody. We have two new recruiters in Missouri, and it hasn't been easy because we don't have that. Everything has to be done by phone, and part of being a good recruiter is just going, driving out there and talking to the families face to face. That's part of the recruitment process, but it's just different right now. But you'll get there. I mean, don't worry too much about learning everything, every single thing that is in the guidance and all that. It's just like a good mix of knowing what you are supposed to know, but also talking to the families and getting the information from them. It's just as important.
Exactly. So
Yes, Maria. Don't worry. You'll be fine. It's just a matter of time. Practice makes perfect.
exactly. I've always heard people from OME and others experienced recruiters say that many times it can take recruiters up to 3 years, to learn to be great recruiters. And so, keep that in mind. It can be a slow process, building your network, getting out there, learning those mistakes, learning the finer parts of being a recruiter. So just keep at it and talk to your supervisors. Don't let yourself get down. So now let's transition and talk a little bit more about actually being out in the field. When we're out there, as I mentioned, we have to be detectives in the field. And one of the key ways of being a detective, is to make sure that we always have our eyes open, looking for evidence of possible migrant workers or for new farms. Experienced recruiters are always looking for signs of where migrant workers could be working and living. I think one of the key things that I had to learn when I was starting to recruiter was to look for those signs that you can find out on front of houses, on porches, that might tell you a migrant family is living there. So I wanted, as an example of some of those things you should look for, always look for agricultural equipment or boxes that might be out on the front porch. Oftentimes, families, if they're working for a seasonal farm that has a crop, they'll bring some of that home. So you might find, we mentioned lettuce earlier. Maybe you'll find boxes of lettuce on the porch, old boxes of tomatoes. I've even found families that work at processing plants coming home that'll have, boxes from the processing plants out in front of their house. So we have to be out there looking for them. You can always look for, as you're going there, looking for out-of-state license plates, especially if you're a state that sees a lot of movement coming into your state from other states. Look for those out-of-state license plates to help tell you, when somebody might have just arrived. Look for foreign language boxes or packages on a porch or in a trash. Specifically, this photo is a photo I took a few years ago when I was working in Tennessee recruiting, and I was out visiting a county. And as I was visiting a trailer park, I looked down and, they had, the Modelo box, but they also, had several other boxes from a local nursery. And they even had a box there. This was back in February, I believe. And so, hey, they had a box from a Rosca de Reyes that they had gotten to celebrate the Dia de los Reyes. And so seeing that, was an indicator, okay, this is a house that's close to a farm. Maybe they work on the farm. And so I was able to knock on the door and talk to them, and they did end up qualifying. And so you're going to want to look for these indicators out there. Sometimes you'll see tractors near houses, other farm equipment. Look for those trailers or housing that might be near farm sites or dairies. They kind of give you an indication. And you can always find, those farm vehicles or work vehicles. So, work vans, especially with muddy tires that might have gone out into the fields, as well as other types of farm vehicles. Just to kind of give you some other examples of, real life examples of what this looks like. And I think, Jessica, you might be familiar with this because this is all photos taken from McMinnville in Tennessee from the nurseries there. But
yes.
These are baskets that many of the workers at the nurseries use to help them, hold the trees and transplant trees. And so they're stored at the nursery, but oftentimes you can just drive around town and you'll see trucks, you'll see cars that have these baskets in the back of them. And so if and you're familiar with the agriculture in your area, You know the type of tools and equipment that people use. When you're out driving around town, you can see examples of these equipment out there. And so you can know, okay, I see these baskets, so they must work on a nursery. And that gives you an idea of where to stop and talk to people. Similarly, we'll often see in Tennessee, we would see families that have buckets for the tomato fields. And so we would be able to drive around and see the buckets on the fields or on the front porches, because the workers would come home, leave the buckets on their field, and then grab them when they go back to work. And so get familiar with the type of agriculture, the type of qualifying activities done in your area, and the equipment that is used, so you can keep your eye out looking for it while you're out in the field. Now I would like, if we're going to skip ahead a little bit for time, and I would love if we have another recruiter that has offered to share. Iris from Missouri is here. Iris Montalvo. And if you wouldn't mind sharing, you know, what you wish you knew when you were starting as a recruiter.
Well, hello, everyone. I wish I knew to take it easy on myself. I was so nervous. I've only been a recruiter for a little over a year. I was so nervous when I first started. I myself was a migrant student, so I had that connection. But one thing that has helped me is communication. Having good rapport with my migrant families, my OSYs, my, the schools, and the farmers. You have no idea how communication goes far, and just be you, just be yourself, and have fun. I promise you, I feel like I'm not working sometimes, because I mean, it's an awesome, it's just awesome. And one thing that I also would have liked to know is also I'm sorry, the COE. It's very important to know the COE, because when you're out there, and I'm having difficulty, I'm having connection problems, but when you're out there, getting to know everyone, you kind of forget, and then you're like, oh my God, the COE. So you need to know, the COE.
Don't worry, Iris, if you have connection issues. I think all of us, especially recruiters, we get out there, can go to remote places. We're used to having connection issues for sure.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, it's funny that you said that, because you said that we spend a lot of time in the car. I'm actually in the car in a parking lot doing this webinar. So I'm out and about too today. So yeah, it's an awesome feeling when you have good rapport with your farmers, your migrant families. As a matter of fact, let me tell you a little story. Not so long ago, we had a boot heel sweep in my area, and two recruiters, including Yenny, came down to my area, and Eric and I, another recruiter that was here, we ended up going to a house now that we're back recruiting face to face. And I knocked on the door, and I presented myself, and I presented Eric, and we were fine. We were all good. And then as soon as she opened her mouth and I heard the accent, and I said, I've heard this voice before. And then she said her name, and I said, wait a minute, I know you. I ended up doing this parent survey over the phone, and we connected over the phone. She was a very sweet mom from South Africa, and she had two kids that qualified for the program, and we just connected, over the phone. And then when we saw each other in person, it was just a great feeling to finally see my family face to face and make that connection in person. So I believe that's one thing that I would have, just take it easy, just take a deep breath and you'll be fine. I know that all of this is overwhelming. I was overwhelmed too when I first started, but once you start, you start rolling and you're like, okay, I can do this, and then you have success stories. You have stories like this one that, we met over the phone and then in person, and it was just a great feeling.
So true. So true. Thank you so much for sharing and for your commitment to being on the webinar, even as you're in your car. I think for many of us as recruiters, talking about things we should expect, we should all probably expect to be doing some kind of conference call or webinars, on the car while we're out in the field. But it shows how dedicated recruiters truly are out there. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the exciting things that we're doing with IDRC, specifically aimed to help new recruiters. This week, by the end of the week, we're going to have finished and unveil our new version of a curriculum for new recruiters that's called Recruiting 101. And it's a module designed and aimed to help teach recruiters the information they need to be able to get out into the field. Tell it to them about the practical side, what it means to be a recruiter, what they should know in order to help kind of get them to where they need to be to start having early success. And so it's going to be an online training module, like I said, aimed at teaching all new recruiters what they need to know. It's going to be hosted on the IDRC website. It's a series of 7 lessons designed to be used by recruiters for self-study. And so currently at this time, we wanted it to be something that recruiters can go through and experience at their own pace, so that they can learn as they need to learn. Each chapter in the module, each section in the module, each lesson is designed to be completed within 30 minutes or less. So recruiters, in a week, they could go do a module a day and have that information. And we wanted to make sure that each module had as much information as possible, while also being able to be flexible with how long it takes for recruiters to do it. Each lesson, as I mentioned, covers an important aspect of what it means to be a recruiter. And so we have lessons that go, number 1, what it takes to be a great recruiter. Lesson number 2 is all about the resources that are out there that are available for recruiters. Number 3 is all about what is a migratory agricultural worker. Number 4 is all about the qualifying move. Lesson 5 is helping recruiters to get familiar with the COE. So as we just heard from Iris, it's so important for us to be familiar with the COE, to have that practice so that when we go through and are filling out a COE in real time with a family, we are able to complete it correctly. And so we have to get familiar. We have to have that practice. And then lesson 6 is all about actually getting out into the field, what recruiters should know, for their first time out in the field, and then what they should know after coming back and returning from the field. So what's important for recruiters to do when they come back? What's important for recruiters to remember after being out in the field? Each chapter and the Recruiting 101 module is going to come, the whole module is going to come with a workbook, and each chapter will have a section of the workbook that includes learning objectives of each chapter, resources that recruiters can turn to for further learning, as well as questions that can help the recruiters to help facilitate their learning and to help self-reflection so that recruiters can help process the information as it's happening. And the workbook will also include for each lesson an activity that helps recruiters put into practice what they are learning, as well as a link to an online mini quiz that can help them evaluate their learning to make sure that they are learning the information as they go along. One other key thing about the Recruiting 101 modules as we go through is that each chapter, each section of the module, each lesson has just as we had recruiters today sharing their experience, it's so valuable for new recruiters to hear from recruiters all over the country, so that they know that they're a part of something bigger, and so they can learn from those with experience. Just as Olivia said in the beginning, we shouldn't, keep what we learn to ourselves. And so each chapter, each lesson in the module includes tips from real recruiters all around the country that they have learned out on the job to help, recruiters become better. One other new thing that I would like to share is the IDRC Learning Portal. And so the Learning Portal is a new portion of the IDRC website designed to help, new and experienced recruiters alike learn and continue to grow on the job. And so it's a learning portal, features dozens of online webinars and resources that are available for free viewing at any time. And so I'm posting the link in chat right now directly to the online learning portal. But if you would like to visit yourself, you can visit, the IDRC website found at idr-consortium.net. And right here, when you go to the front page of the IDRC website, you'll see down below where it says access the IDRC learning portal. And so you can click on the learning portal, and then you will see a list of several topics. And so each of these topics contains webinars and resources that have been collected by IDRC to help recruiters. You can see at the top exactly, what is the new and latest. And so what we have gone through, we've looked at all the webinars, monthly webinars that we have given essentially over the last year and a half, collected them, and then has spent the last month, working to get them all uploaded to YouTube so that they are available now for free from the IDRC YouTube page. They're embedded on the IDRC website so that recruiters can watch them from their own time. You can listen to them, while you're driving even. Just don't watch them. Make sure you're paying attention while driving. But to access the different webinars, the topics, go through, choose the topic that you want to learn more about. So for example, if you wanted specifically, we're talking about COEs and how important COEs are, you can click on scenarios, and that'll take you straight to a webinar that we've done that's all about recruiting scenarios. And so you can click play to watch the webinar, go through the scenarios that were done. You can see here the references. You can see scenario 1 references directly the non-regulatory guidance in this page. Question scenario 4 references the guidance in this page. Down below, you can also see links to our monthly scenario newsletter. Each month, we send out a newsletter available with new scenarios for recruiters to practice with. And so for you wanting to get familiar with the COE, you can go search the scenarios and see and get that practice. So we encourage everybody to explore each of the different topics that are out there, see what you learn, and know that we're going to be updating it regularly as well. This webinar will be up there shortly. And so go continue to learn and see what new things are there. Jessica, talking about webinars, is there anything that you would like to mention about the IDRC website? Would you like to advertise our upcoming webinars?
Yeah, if you want to show them how to find those on the website while I'm talking, one of the things that we're trying to do is make sure. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So to find out about the exciting things that we have coming up for webinars and other events from the IDRC webpage, homepage, you can go to where it says IDRC and go scroll down to where it says upcoming events. And that'll show you exactly, the webinars that are coming up. So you can see here on June 8th, the webinar that we're participating in, but we also have a new webinar next week.
Perfect. So one of the things that we're trying to do is make sure that most of our, trainings are available pretty much to every state, but we have come across some, for us, we feel like housing is kind of one of the real essential parts of recruiting in a community. And we've come across some resources to kind of help states identify housing locations quicker. And then if you're new, just knowing how you approach different types of housing and how you can possibly canvas quickly. And so next week, we're going to do an hour-long webinar on that and the resources we have and just kind of the mindset of how to, you don't have to knock on every single door, and how it changes between urban and rural. And so next week we're going to focus on that, and we will record that for anyone that can attend. But that's just an additional one that we added due to some interest in several states of really wanting to know how to canvas housing. So that'll be next week about this time, next Tuesday. And so we do, if you'll register for those, that's the best way to get access to it. And on this page, we try to put all of our access information for everything that's coming up. So that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Jessica. We would love for everybody to attend that. And so again, if you go through to the IDRC website, you scroll down to where it says upcoming events. From there, you can click on the event. Oops. And it'll have the link right there for you to register. I'm going to go ahead, for all those that want to attend, share that link in chat so you can click on that link to register for our new webinar next week that's all about housing. So we thank you all so much for attending today. It's really been great to have everybody here. We've had a great turnout, and it's been great to talk about, these things that recruiters must know, and about the different services that are available out there for them. We really are excited to share some of the new tools and projects that we've been working on with everybody. And so be on the lookout later this week for that, for the link that's going to be out there to the new Recruiting 101 module. But in the meantime, one of our requirements, we are required to ask for anybody that attends our webinars, if you wouldn't mind filling out a quick survey. We want to make sure that we're providing the best possible training out there. And so there is a SurveyMonkey link that you can click on that is included, that I've sent in the chat. Or if you're familiar with QR codes, you can open up your smartphone, open up your camera, scan the code on the screen, and that should open up a link that'll take you directly to the survey. So you can go and let us know how we're doing, as well as let us know, any other topics that you might want to hear about training for in the future. In that, you can click on the title is going to be Recruiting 101. That should be your training title. And so we really appreciate it. We appreciate everybody being here today. Thank you so much. Huge round of applause for the 3 recruiters that helped us out today by contributing. To Olivia from Oregon. Thank you to Yeni from Missouri, and Iris from Missouri as well. It was so great to hear from you all, and we really do appreciate and want to be able to hear from more voices from recruiters around the country. Here is my contact information. If you need anything or have any questions, feel free to reach out to Jessica and I. We'd be glad to help you. And again, be on the lookout later. We'll be posting this website or this webinar on the IDRC website. So thank you all so much, and I hope you all have a great day.